welcome to Urban Farmer. This is your host Sriram. We are talking to Dr. K.K. Narayanan today on vegetables and fruits in our diet. Dr. K.K. Narayanan is a founder and managing director of Metahelix Life Sciences, which is now a TATA Group, Bangalore-based Ag-biotech Company. He has a Ph.D. in plant breeding and genetics and did his post-doctoral work at the Department of Biological Sciences, Stanford University. He is also chairman of Kottaram Agro-Foods, an award-winning company which makes packed food products using traditional Indian grains like Ragi under the brand Soulful. Welcome, Dr. Narayanan, to Urban Farmer. The floor is yours.
Thanks, Sriram, and hello, friends. Today I am going to talk about the importance of vegetables and fruits in one's diet. I'm sure most of you know that we get all the nutrients that we need for the functioning of our bodies, the building of our bodies from the food that we consume. If you look at the nutrients in these foods, you have major nutrients like carbohydrates, which provide the energy, or you can even call it, which provides the calories for the activities that we do. We have the proteins, which form the bulk of the tissue that we are made up of, for example, the muscles. They are also involved in several of our metabolic functions as enzymes or biocatalysts. And then we have the fats, which are again reserves of energy, but they are also involved in several metabolic processes. Now, in addition to these major nutrients, there are several nutrients that we require in relatively minor amounts, like vitamins, for example, or some of the minerals like potassium, phosphorus, zinc. Now, these are called micronutrients, like I said, because they are required in relatively smaller amounts. Now, the deficiency of micronutrients in our diet can lead to serious health conditions, but they may not be immediately obvious. So you may have a full stomach because you have eaten a full meal of staples, but your meal could be deficient in some of these micronutrients. So that is the reason why the deficiency of micronutrients is often referred to as hidden hunger, because there are no immediate obvious symptoms, but in the long term, it can lead to severe health problems, some of which are irreversible. Now, vegetables and fruits are a major source of several of these micronutrients in our diet. For example, if you take the green vegetables, they contain beta-carotene, a pigment which is a precursor of vitamin A. And you know that vitamin A is very, very important for maintaining and sustaining our immune system. Now, this is particularly relevant because in these times when we are under the threat of the coronavirus and we are under a lockdown, it is not enough if we just follow social distancing procedures, but it's also important that we actually take the right diet so that our body is sufficiently prepared to ward off any infection. Take folate, for example. Vegetables and fruits are a big source of folate. Folate is a very important micronutrient. It helps in one of the functions it has is helping in the absorption and assimilation of iron. And you know that the element iron is a key component of the protein called hemoglobin, which allows our blood to absorb oxygen, transport it to the tissues, and release the oxygen to our tissues so that the tissues and the cells can function. Vitamin C, one of the primary sources of vitamin C in our diets is from vegetable sources. And vitamin C also has got many, many functions, including protection against some of the infections and diseases. Or in other words, boosting our body protective mechanisms. Potassium is an element which is key to our proper functioning. our bodies need potassium, and they are involved in several metabolic processes as part of enzymes. Potassium also, some of you may know, is key to the proper functioning of the heart and is important in regulating our blood pressure. Now, in addition to these micronutrients, vegetables also provide the dietary fiber that is required. So in addition to these micronutrients, several of them which are key to the proper functioning of our bodies, dietary fiber is important, not just in facilitating or allowing the bowels to function normally, but there is sufficient evidence today to suggest that adequate dietary fiber should be a key component of one meal, and that actually helps in warding off or lessening the probability of getting even serious diseases like cancer of some of the organs involved in our digestive system. Now, friends, some of the nutrients that are present in the vegetables, like vitamin C, for example, get denatured or destroyed when we cook them or when the vegetables are subjected to heat. So while you can include vegetables and fruits in the cooked forms that we consume every day, it is also recommended that some portion of it should be taken raw in the form of salads, so that some of these nutrients like vitamin C is also present in them in adequate amounts. Now, this brings us to the question of producing, handling, and processing of these vegetables in a hygienic and scientific way, so that we reduce the possibility of the presence of any toxic residues or harmful microorganisms in them before we consume. So I would strongly recommend that we make vegetables and fruits an essential constituents in our daily diet. It will help us in maintaining proper health and help us in our normal brain development and activity, and help us in many, many different ways, including in warding off some of the infections. Now, about producing safe vegetables, I think that's a topic for another day. Till such time, bye. And back to you, Sriram.
Okay, Doctor. I have a few questions. Some of the questions are my own, and some of the questions are asked by my friends. See, we are in the middle of a COVID-19 outbreak. And what are your recommendations with vegetables and fruits?
A few things. From the top of my head, I can tell you that to make sure that your immune system is well primed to prevent any infection, whether it be COVID or any other organisms which can be harmful to the human body, it's important that you take all the nutrients that are required, and for which vegetables form a key source. Now, in addition to that, you all will agree that because of the lockdown during these days, we have become more sedentary, or our normal physical activities have been affected in some ways or the other, though we are trying to keep up with the physical activity. So it's all the more important that we reduce our calorie intake and at the same time satisfy our need for food. So vegetables, generally, most of them, exceptions are like potato, which is high in starch, are very low in calorie, but they provide the essential nutrients. So they give you the bulk that will lead to your satiation when you consume them, but at the same time, it will help you to manage your weight under reasonable limits. So these are some of the advantages, and it's probably all the more important that you initiate this process of integrating vegetables with the other components of your diet.
Thanks for that reply, Doc. A second question is, I have read that vegetables and fruits that come to the market are usually full of chemicals that's sprayed on during its growth. Is there a way to prevent that poison getting into our system?
I think if you recall towards the end of my remarks, I said that you need to produce safe vegetables in a hygienic way and avoid the occurrence of toxic residues. Yes, when chemicals are used excessively and when they are abused, some of their residues will remain in the produce that we get. Also, near urban areas, many times the water that they use for irrigation may not be of the best quality. It could be contaminated with sludge and sewage. So that could lead to the prevalence of microorganisms. In fact, there are ways, scientific ways of following practices which actually reduce the levels of such contaminants in your vegetable produce to levels that are safe. In addition to that, it is always a good practice that when you get your vegetables and fruits, to wash them appropriately, washing them with a mild detergent or keeping them immersed in salt water and then rinsing them would remove most of the chemicals. But today in agriculture, we also use chemicals which are called systemic chemicals. If they are abused or used very close to the harvesting period, some traces of it may remain in the vegetable inside. So washing may not remove it. In such cases, I think you have to be careful about who is supplying the vegetable, from which place it is being produced. So if you have a traceability of the produce, then you can avoid such vegetables and fruits which may contain internally the contaminants, which cannot be removed by normal washing. But I would suggest that washing the vegetables before you put it away for storage or before you use it for cooking should become a standard practice.
Okay. Doctor, is there a difference in nutrition level between, for example, freshly plucked tomatoes or spinach and the ones we get from the supermarket shelves?
See, now your question assumes that what we get in the supermarkets are not fresh. Of course, there's a difference in the nutrient level between fresh produce and produce that has not been stored properly for a long period of time. Now, there are ways of storage to preserve the nutrients. And because today, I think vegetables travel distances, because the areas of consumption is not exactly the areas where they are produced. They travel, for example, tomato may be produced in Kolar, but the consumption could be anywhere from Kashmir to Kanyakumari. So this transportation requires that you use scientific methods of storage. Now, if you don't store them scientifically, oftentimes in the warehouse shelves or in the stores, because a lot of customers come and handle those, they may not be under the ideal storage conditions. So the longer they remain there, there will be a deterioration in the quality. So it may always be a good idea to ask the store manager or the storekeeper, at least when those vegetables were procured. You may not know when they were harvested, but ideally if you can reduce the time between harvest and consumption, most of the nutrients will be preserved. And if for any reason there has to be a stretching of that time between harvest and actual consumption or the vegetables reaching the table, you should use scientific methods to store them or preserve them so that the nutrients levels and to avoid also, not just to preserve the nutrients, but also to make sure that harmful pathogens and other things don't grow on it.
Wow. And I wanted to ask this question. You know, when I was in school, I used to snack on elanda padam, naval padam, kodukka puli, all those things. Now I don't see them anymore. Can you tell me something about the nutrition that was inside them and also why they are not mainstream anymore?
See, like any other fruits, elanda padam also contains many useful micronutrients. The other advantage is Erandaparam, it can be grown under hardy conditions. So actually, in fact, there's a revival of the cultivation of some of these crops with issues like climate change and vagaries and less water and stuff like that. They're pretty hardy. Nyavalparam, for example, they contain the pigments, many of which act as antioxidants. And antioxidants are useful in many ways for us. Some of the ill effects on our health is essentially
pigments. These are the violet pigment you're talking about.
Violet pigment, which is anthocyanin.
Compare our
there
tongue.
Are many pigments. That's right.
We used to compare our tongue. Whose tongue was more violet?
That's right. So these act as antioxidants, and they avoid the prevalence of free radicals, which are implicated in several adverse health conditions in humans. So, in fact, whenever you choose vegetables, it will be better if you choose ones which are very colorful, because many of these pigments have got really useful health properties.
Awesome. Okay, one final question, Doc. I wanted to know, would supplements be a good substitute for the real thing? Because many people are saying you eat some spirulina, you eat some, vitamin D tablets or vitamin K or something like that. So do supplements really act as a good substitute for the real vegetables and fruits?
No, supplements will not be a substitute, but supplements have their use. For example, if already somebody is diagnosed with really serious micronutrient deficiency, let's say vitamin A, then supplements can be a quick way of infusing back the required nutrient. But supplements provide only that specific micronutrient. For example, if you take keera or palak, for example, it has got a lot of the precursor beta carotene, which gets converted into vitamin A based on the body's requirement. But it also contains dietary fiber. It also contains other micronutrients. So it is more wholesome compared to a supplement. But avoiding taking vegetables and fruit by just substituting with supplements is not something that I would recommend.
Thank you so much, Dr. Narayanan, for your time. And viewers, we will meet up with Dr. Narayanan another time with another interesting episode on urban farmer. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And bye-bye. Good day to all of you.